Hey friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. I am doing fantastic, bro. So a little while back, I placed a big order on JOMASHOP. I bought a lot of stuff, pretty much all of it blind buys, which by the way, that is the best way to do it. Just straight up impulse buys, blind buys, you will never go wrong. Oops. But anyway, I ordered a whole bunch of stuff from JOMASHOP, and I think JOMASHOP is sending my 15 fragrances in 15 different boxes. That's how it feels like. Every day I get a new email. Part of your order has shipped. I think they're losing money on like me buying stuff from them just because they break it up into 15 different shipments, it feels like, but whatever. Anyway, part of that haul was this. It's from Lattafa, and it's called Jasoor. And this is one basically where I was just scrolling through Armaf, Lattafa, Maison Alhambra, Fragrance World, all those brands, looking for stuff that I don't have that caught my eye, and it caught my eye. And I'm glad it did, because low-key, this stuff actually is fantastic. It is a solid clone, and I paid $24.99 for it. So a whole penny, under 25 bucks. Which is just cheesy, because then you can be like, dog, you can get this for under $25. It's a great deal. Oh, under 25 bucks, like what? Like 19? 22? $24.99. Yeah, under $25 though. So yeah, under 25 bucks, and in this video, I'll let you know why it's so good. I'll talk about the performance, we'll go over the presentation, talk about how it smells, what it's a clone of, all that stuff. So I will have this one linked in the description. Again, I got it from JOMASHOP. If I find it for cheaper at other places, I'll link it there as well, but you can check that out in the description. Before we start checking out the presentation here are some codes you can use to save yourself some money, including a couple new codes at JOMASHOP, which I may or may not, definitely did, use for my haul when I made the order. But those only work in the JOMASHOP app, so be aware of that. Which is weird, because the JOMASHOP app is pretty much just their website, but you know, what do I know? And then there's also new codes for the Oud store, among many other stores where you can use these codes to save yourself a little cash. All right, let's get started by taking a look at the presentation, starting with the box. So you have on the front there, name of the house, name of the fragrance, size and concentration. It's an Eau de Parfum 100 ml. And this is once again one of those fragrances where Lattafa was like, you know what would just be sick and would make everyone want this? If we just threw random words on there, that would be just freaking sick. So if you remember Rom Silver, that one has just a bunch of random words on there. This one does as well. Let's check some of these out. Courageous, bold, brave, fearless, destiny, adventure, daring, intrepid. And then on the other side, hope, valiant, fearless, victory. Well, and then on the other side, you've got some of those repeating, some new ones like valiant thrown in there. But yeah, you've got just a bunch of different words that wrap around the box. You have on one side your sticker of authenticity. On the back, you have your caution in multiple different languages. On the bottom, you have your badge code and barcode. And then on top, it says Lattafa. And then you go ahead and take the top off here, and what happens? Boxception is what happens. That's right, box inside a box. But this is not a full box. No, this says Lattafa Jasoor on the front there, and then you take this off, and the fragrance sits inside here. So I guess, you know, it just makes it look a little bit nicer and keeps the bottle from moving around quite as much, but that's how it'll be when you get it. You take that off. Oh, and then that comes off too. It's just the whole thing, man. It does look good though, and it feels good. The quality is nice. It doesn't feel like cheap cardboard or anything like that. You know, it's not coming apart at the seams or anything. So once again, the quality of these clone fragrances going up as far as the presentation goes. Because again, under 25 bucks, technically. And here we have the bottle. So you have on the cap, once again, those words going around in gold this time. Looks very fancy. You have the name of the house, name of the fragrance on the front of the bottle, Lattafa on top of the cap. On the bottom, just a sticker, just a plain little sticker. Pop the cap off, and there's your atomizer. It does look a little funny, you know, but it gets the job done. And let's go ahead and share a couple sprays of Jasoor. Here we go. Atomizer is nice. Boom. Woo! This stuff smells nice off a tester strip, really good. I skipped the strip. When this came in, sprayed it straight on skin right from the get-go. So this is actually the first time I've smelled it off a tester strip. That's good. Nice and sweet. All right, so how does this smell? What does it smell similar to? Quality, performance, all that. Well, when you first spray this one on, it has a really appealing sweetness to it. Comes through very strongly when you first spray it. Cardamom and apple especially, the apple grabs your attention as soon as you spray this stuff on, and it is immediately apparent what this is a clone of, at least to me. And that is this one, Valentino Uomo, Born in Roma Coral Fantasy. Yes, that is a mouthful. I think I'll just stick with Jasoor. But when you spray these on side by side and you do a comparison, you can tell right away that these are extremely similar. They both have a nice sweetness off the top, really appealing as soon as you spray these on, both of them. Initially, I thought when I sprayed this on without comparing them side by side when I first got it in, that this was actually maybe a little sweeter than Coral Fantasy. But then when I sprayed them on side by side, I was like, oh, no, I think Coral Fantasy actually leans a little bit more into the apple off the top. You still get the apple in the Lattafa, but there's a little more lean that way here. Still really well done, very similar. And as far as performance goes, off the top, about the same. When I was wearing both of these, a couple sprays here, a couple sprays there, and one was not overpowering the other. When I smelled one, it wasn't like, you know, going back and forth. You could tell one was definitely stronger. They're about the same, evenly matched in the opening. Just a little more cardamom lean maybe over here with Jasoor, and also more lavender. I'll talk about that in a second. And more apple and Coral Fantasy off the top. But this is one of those deals where you start to split hairs a little bit. There are differences there, but these are not differences that are like wide and far apart. You know, there's not a canyon between these. They're pretty close. Now, I'd say the biggest difference for me is heading through the mid, Jasoor leans a little more into the lavender than Coral Fantasy does. So it's a semi-sweet, clean lavender, and then you have it mixed together with tobacco and tonka, and you can just pick up a little more of that peeking through in Jasoor than you do in Coral Fantasy. The sweetness in Coral Fantasy is also a little bit more pronounced as it dries down, more the fruit side of things, the fruity sweetness, I should say. Jasoor still has sweetness from the fruit, from the apple in the opening, just not quite as much. And then when you hit the dry down, it switches over to more tonka, kind of vanillic almost sweetness in Jasoor. They both feature tobacco as a note, a little more tobacco coming across in Coral Fantasy, but at the end of the day, these are stupid close. If you have smelled this fragrance, if you're really familiar with this, then when you smell Jasoor over here, you're gonna know what it is, and you're gonna know right away like, oh, yeah, they crushed it. So while there are some differences here, a little more of an aromatic lean, a slight aromatic lean to Jasoor more so than Coral Fantasy, it's not a massive difference. And in the air, realistically, are people gonna come up to you and be like, oh, it smells like Coral Fantasy, but I can tell it's actually 92% Coral Fantasy. You got on a Lattafa, don't you? That will never happen. If that happened to me in real life, wearing this, my head would literally explode. And I would be like, dog, do you have a channel? You should. And anyway, most of the differences between these are not ones that you pick up in the air actually wearing it. They're differences that you pick up by doing this. Is that normal? I don't think so. I still do it. It is a killer clone of Coral Fantasy at the end of the day. Under 25 bucks, and it comes stupidly close to this one with a nice presentation, good looking 2 boxes, and a nice looking bottle as well. And as far as performance goes, it's pretty much on par with Coral Fantasy. I will say that heading through the first part of the mid, where there's more of like the higher end fruity sweetness coming through Coral Fantasy, and this one over here starts to lean a little touch more toward the lavender, slightly more aromatic. it may come across like this one is projecting a little better because that sweetness is easier to pick up when you first go in like this. But when you actually give these a wearing side by side, it's about the same. It's about a wash. Longevity pretty close to being the same. Projection as well. God, man, off a strip, this stuff is nuts. The sweetness comes through so much more off a strip. I mean, you get sweetness on skin too, but oh, it's friggin' awesome. The opening of Jasoor is fantastic. You almost do it a disservice going back and forth with Coral Fantasy, or you could say also that you give Coral Fantasy a disservice going back and forth because you're trying to pick out these minuscule differences that barely even matter, and you end up just smushing the fragrances together when you go back and forth, back and forth. Oh, it smells really, really, really good. So what I would say is if you're a fan of this, but you want a cheaper alternative, whether to replace this or because you own this, but maybe sometimes you'd rather wear something that doesn't cost as much but is gonna give you a similar feel, you gotta check this stuff out. Really well done. One of Lattafa's better releases here recently. Hopefully some of these discounters don't try to gouge on that a little bit, because I think where it's priced, 25 bucks, that is solid. I think if it goes lower, that's even better. But if this one creeps up to like 45 or something, I think at that point that's too much, especially because it's priced right now at that price, right? So if it starts getting gouged, I would wait and then scoop it up when it makes more sense. But this, as it is, this is like the 9 p.m. to Ultramall. This is like that to Coral Fantasy. So there we go, guys. Jasoor, really dig it. Very nice quality, good presentation, low price, nice performance, everything you want. And it's a clone of a fragrance that gets big compliments, that is extremely versatile, that you can use most of the year. So a lot to love with this one. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.